Evening. This is the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, March 12th, 2015. We're going to begin tonight with a moment of silence for Dr. J. William Dolan. Dr. Dolan was a member of the Planning Board for 33 years, from 1974 through 2007, and he's the longest-serving member of the Planning Board. He was also a town meeting member for 40 years, and his family has been very active in Milton. His brother currently serves on the Cemetery Board of Trustees. So on behalf of the town of Milton, the Board of Selectmen extends condolences to Mrs. Dolan and all of the members of the Dolan family. And we'll have a moment of silence in memory of Dr. Dolan. Thank you. We're starting tonight with a very, very brief executive session. And then we will return to open session for our full agenda. I know we have a lot of people here, so we thank you for waiting outside while we have the executive session, and it will be very short, and you can all come right back in. So do we have a motion? I'll move to enter executive session to release to the public the January 21st, 2015 executive session meeting minutes, and to return to open session.
Second.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
And myself, yes. We're now in executive session.
You going, Emery? Paula? No? You're not going? The MFE? The MF, okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you all for your patience and for waiting outside. We apologize for that inconvenience, but the next item on our agenda is to approve our January 21st, 2015 open session minutes.
Move approval of the January 21st, 2015 meeting minutes.
Second.
Any changes, discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is our future meeting dates. We've posted for Monday, the 16th, with the Warrant Committee and Town Government Study Committee, again, to talk about the warrant articles and specifically the Town Administrator article, which we'll take up a bit later tonight. And our next dates are scheduled for the 24th and the 31st. Oh, I'm sorry. Very good. Sorry. Thank you. Our next meetings after the 16th are scheduled for the 24th and the 31st. There is a Warrant Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 18th. I don't know if we need to be there for any articles, but if so, we'll add a posting for that in case any of us decide to go to it. Payroll and vendor warrants.
Move approval of current payroll and vendor warrants.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Citizen speak. Do we have anyone here tonight who would like to speak with the board at Citizen Speak? Yes, sir.
Tom Magman from Lyman Road here in Milton.
Good evening.
Excuse me?
Good evening.
Good evening to all. And I number one want to thank all you for allowing me to be here, and especially Paula. She's been so gracious in helping me, and I appreciate it. I just want to I'm not here to complain. I just want to compliment the DPW on the outstanding job they did in the last humongous snowstorm. And a lot of the DPW workers are personal friends of mine, an extended family of mine. And it was brought to my attention in a recent conversation with them just last Friday that how nasty, rude, and downright rotten some of the people have been to them. And not only getting the Bronx cheer flipped at them, but cursed at, stuff thrown at them, just being rude and obnoxious, and that's so uncalled for. Those guys work very hard, very diligently, and they don't make humongous amounts of money every year, and they are out morning, noon, and night, and people don't appreciate it. And I'd just like to strongly suggest to any of the residents that partook in such behavior, it's shame on them, because those guys really, really put their out-and-out effort. There's not a decent, more kind group of men and women than the public works people. I know Ben Casey, the dispatcher, is a very dear friend of mine. I was in the dispatch center at the DPW yard a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't believe the work he does in that dispatch center, monitoring calls on the computer, radios, telephones, and several of the other guys. And people don't realize, like Kevin and Charlie, they could be out plowing and be up in bucket trucks tomorrow changing street lights. And it goes unappreciated by a lot of the residents. And I'd strongly ask the residents, next time you encounter DPW employees, to go out, speak to them, and acknowledge them and say thank you. Even offer them a cup of coffee or a cold drink. And just by extending the little olive branch, that creates a lot of goodwill. And when someone's appreciated, it makes you feel good, makes them feel good. I just couldn't believe what some of them have been through, and it's totally uncalled for. Those guys are real professionals. They've been very kind to me over the year, and Paula and Anne Marie both know I'm a very big fan of the DPW, and there's no bigger thrill for me when I call him the gentle giant. Pat Feeney will come up Reedsdale Road when I'm out doing my 3-mile walk, say, "Hi, Tom, how you doing?" They're very respectful, and they're a wonderful group of people, and I thank them one and all. I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be here tonight. It's a pleasure. It's the first time I've met Mr. Cohen and Mr. Hurley, and Ms. Conlon, and it's just been a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to have the DPW workers as friends and extended family, and I just thank you very much.
Thank you for
very
those
much,
kind
sir.
words.
Thank
You're very
you.
welcome. Thank you, Ms. Paula. Good night, everyone.
Would anyone else like to address the board at Citizen Speak tonight? Cindy Christensen.
Cindy?
Hi,
Hi, Sandy.
Good evening, Cindy.
I'm Dr. Cindy Christensen. I live at 59 Collimer Street, and I'm a town meeting member for Precinct 7. I think all three of you were at last night's warrant committee meeting, and so you likely heard Mr. Sheffield say that the East Milton Neighborhood Association is a group that doesn't want to listen with respect to the Plates liquor license article. I want you to know that's not true. East Milton Neighborhood Association offered to add this topic to our third meeting agenda later this spring, and also suggested that he could organize his own meeting for citizen input like Attorney McKettrick did for the Falcone property. I helped get the word out for that meeting, and I would do the same for Mr. Sheffield. He decided not to engage the residents in that way, instead contacting Attorney Dunn and me earlier this week with his request to meet with us this week. We could not accommodate his schedule. As a town meeting member, I want to report that many of my constituents have contacted me after learning about the expansion to serve liquor at this location. Some are upset because they learned about this expansion only in the last few months. All who have spoken to me have said that they do not want another restaurant with a liquor license in East Milton. Speaking for myself, I'm disappointed to learn that a liquor license request for the Plate at the Marketplace restaurant location was being discussed 10 months ago when the town meeting voted on the article for a license at the new Falcone restaurant. I only learned about it in February. As a town meeting member, I'm working to try to move forward with improved and timely communication, transparency, honesty, and respect for the residents of Precinct 7 and for the attempts I've personally made to represent residents while also promoting a friendly resident and business environment. Attorney Dunn is out of town on business, so cannot be here to speak tonight, but I think you all heard his concerns expressed at the meeting last night. As you discuss this warrant article, I encourage you to ask these 4 questions, which are questions that I've also been asked by my constituents. Number 1, what's the rush? Even with a 1.5 process to obtain the license, why does a restaurant that plans to serve breakfast, lunch, and brunch need to start the liquor license process now? Question 2, what is the saturation point for liquor license in East Milton Square? Question 3, the Marketplace is zoned residential. What are the consequences of permitting a liquor license to a business operating in a residential zone? Question 4, and this is the one that's most important to me, what is the marginal increase in revenue that this liquor license is expected to provide? I think we need numbers to properly assess that and make good decisions. I think most residents in East Milton are business friendly. However, we expect honesty, transparency, open communication, and the right to express concerns without being categorized as being emotional or overly reactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks, Cindy.
Do we have anyone else tonight who would like to speak to the board at Citizen Speak? Seeing none, then we'll go on to the next item on our agenda, which is the warrant article discussion for the Plate liquor license. Do we have Suzanne Lombardi? I can't see everyone in the room here. Is Suzanne
That's
or
someplace.
Bob Sheffield? Okay. 7:30? Okay, so we're a little ahead of schedule. So we'll go on then to number 7, which is the Uland Rink Annual Management Contract Report. And we have representatives of Curry College here tonight.
Hey, Rich.
How you doing?
Bob.
Hey, Rich.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Would you all please just state your names and titles with Curry for the record?
Sure. Rich Sullivan, Chief Financial Officer.
Robert O'Connell, Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Kevin Burchill, General Manager of the rink.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us join you tonight. We're pleased to be here and pleased to have served the town for another year as manager of the Ullin Rink. I forwarded on an annual report to the board about a week ago. What I suggest is I can run through quickly with the highlights and then open it up for discussions, questions
great.
that you may have. This is the 5th year operating as rink manager under contract with the town. It's been a partnership that has gone on for, as I say, 4.5 years, with the scheduled expiration date of the town's permit with the DCR and the contract with the college ending April 30. There's been much uncertainty regarding the future of the rink beyond April 30th, yet the town and the college, working in partnership, have achieved a number of important goals for the town. Over this 5-year period, we've been able to insulate the town and its citizens from any financial exposure from the rink. The college has invested over $500,000 in the form of operating losses and capital improvements in the rink. We've extended the operating season by approximately 25% from what the DCR operated. The public skating hours have been increased by over 40%. We've focused on customer satisfaction with the capital improvements in the rink, while we've also been trying to focus on user satisfaction in the daily operation of the rink, while at the same time trying to bring in additional users to the rink. And as a result of all of this, we've been able to substantially reduce the operating deficit that was reported at over $300,000 a year when the DCR was operating the Ullin Rink. But still, challenges remain in getting the rink to what we would consider a sustainable enterprise. The principal issues that we see going forward are, one, securing a long-term arrangement for appropriate investment in the rink. The town has been working diligently over the last 4.5 years to try to make that happen, and we understand currently the town is pursuing an interim arrangement while a long-term agreement is worked on. Additionally, making reasonable adjustments to ice time rental rates. The last time the rates were increased was the 09-10 season, so the DCR did approve rate increases, or the state approved rate increases this past January. We support the town's decision to defer those increases until next year. And thirdly, the DCR has invested significantly in a number of outsourced rinks. We've provided a list to the town so the town may pursue, trying to get some of those similar improvements in the Ullin Rink to relieve some of the burden of capital expenditures going forward. The capital expenditures to date have been over $200,000. They're enumerated in the report, and against those we've received $54,000 in energy rebates. The time allotment for the and allocations for the rink are, as I mentioned, about 25% more hours of use now than when the DCR opened the rink. The primary users of peak hours, and it's interesting that the DCR in the new rate structure has started to distinguish between peak hours of use and off-peak hours of use. And the primary users of the peak hours continue to be Milton Youth Hockey, the South Shore Conference Youth Hockey League, as the two primary users of peak time, and the primary user of off-peak time is Curry College, with approximately 3/4 of our hours used being off-peak. As I mentioned, public skating has increased significantly, and this year we have over 260 hours of scheduled time, much of that time on days when the rink is, or the schools are closed and the rink is available to the youth of the town. And that 261 hours is actually after we've had to reduce some of the hours for rink closures. We were closed for a week for removal of the snow from the roof, and we've been able to get schedule some additional public skating hours to make up for that time. So those are the highlights of the report, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions I can regarding the operation of the rink or anything that you think may be of interest.
I just have, so are you saying the DCR, we're losing 300,000 a year?
The report was that they were losing over $300,000 a year when they were operating the rink, which was one of the motivations of outsourcing the rinks to others to manage.
And what is the loss that you're taking right now?
It's, if on Exhibit 2 of the report, in the fiscal year or the season, I can talk in seasons, in the season ending in spring of 14, cash loss was $38,000. Our forecast for the end of this season, this year, is a cash loss of $151,000.
How come such a rise?
Well, $66,000 is due to snow removal costs of the roof.
Yeah, that was a question I had. So we had to pay for the removal of the snow from the roof?
Right. What
Who's
happened?
Curry did, I mean, the town was responsible for it, which
Right.
passes off to Curry.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and what happened there, the arrangement that the town has under their permit with the DCR is, the DCR is responsible for the roof. We had put in a call to the DCR as part of that responsibility to address the snow on the roof, but we couldn't wait to see what would happen. I believe their response was taking it under advisement, but
Will you get reimbursed?
Judging from what happened in Canton, it's a damn good thing we didn't.
right. And actually, the DCR at one point sent inspectors around to the rinks, and we were at the rink already with snow removal well underway when they arrived. So we were able to benefit from their structural engineer arriving at the rink, but we couldn't wait. We needed to act, with safety in mind.
Sure.
It's like utilities are another part of the, at least electricity is part of the reason for the increase.
Right.
In the increase in the loss.
Right, somewhat. And one of the exposures we have there is our contract for electrical commodities expired at the end of November this past year. And so without having a long-term arrangement and being able to contract out, we're exposed for fluctuations
So
in
you're just
utility
paying
costs. The going rate.
Going rate, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
Is that heat loss or is it?
That's the generators to keep the ice cold.
Yeah.
Pre-
Has the insulation, I noticed you spent 103,000 on insulation.
Correct.
Has that helped?
I believe so. If you look at those benefits came in the second year of our operation because the first year the season was already starting, so we couldn't make those improvements. So you'll see that the energy costs in fiscal year 11 to fiscal year 13 actually went down, and the operating season extended by 25%, including the warmer periods at either end of the season. So
As a result of the,
right. So what we had was additional energy efficiency from the insulation that was offset by extending the year by 25% into the warmer months.
So month-to-month kilowatt hour usage is down. But because the cost of electricity is up, particularly due to the gas demand in the area and the extended season, the cost of operation is up.
And, while we're on utilities, so I noticed the water and sewer kind of bounces up and down. Why is that?
I'm not sure what I can look into what happened in this past year. It was up about $10,000 from the year before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 15 is projected at a small,
It's back to normal, if you will.
yeah. Yeah, so it looks like 14 spiked
Right.
for some reason or other.
Some of that can be due to when they actually take the meter readings, and also how much water is being used on different activity. So for instance, we see it up at the college. There are certain times when you have high load in one building for shower usage and no load in another area. So different groups using different amounts make a difference.
And our projected revenue is down for 15 because it doesn't include the playoffs, is that?
That's right.
And 14 did.
Right.
So
14
so that
had
revenue may go up depending upon what happens in the playoffs.
And what we had, because we didn't know what it would be, we forecast for conservatism a full 12 months of activity for fiscal 15, and we didn't cut it off in the end of April, so there's a few extra months because the fiscal year ends August 31st for this operation. So we, for conservatism, included a full 12 months in here. So
Okay.
a comparison and planning purposes.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about the amount of hours, the scheduled free skating?
Sure.
Because that seems to be the big feedback we're getting. Has it changed from when DCR managed the rink?
Yes, in a couple of important ways. One, the number of hours increased. I believe the number of hours under the DCR was 170. There's
175 of them.
175 in that neighborhood. So they've increased to a minimum of 245 hours a year. The way we came up with that was working with the DCR at the beginning of the town's permit to understand the application of their 16 hours a week of public skating benchmark. But that benchmark is for the period just after Thanksgiving to the middle of March. And they said, you need to average 16 hours a week during that period, but you can satisfy that by starting public skating earlier and running public skating longer. So you do the math, you need to come up with 245 hours, but you can spread that over the entire season. So that's the approach we took. So we increased the hours, and so we immediately looked at the days that the schools were closed at the other times of the season, increased the hours there, and tried to manage that. During the second year of the season, another important change happened when we had the opportunity to bring Commonwealth figure skating in as an additional significant user. So we worked with the user groups and with the town manager, town administrator at the time, to determine how we could adjust times to squeeze them into the schedule. And part of that time was adjusting public skating hours. So at that time, public skating hours became, while still satisfying the 245 hours, became 1 hour on Friday evenings rather than 2 hours. And then the weekend schedules were, had different times on different days. They weren't always the same time on the same day. So those are the changes since the DCR.
So you increased the hours, but you kind of changed the time slots.
Yes, somewhat.
Although looking at your analysis here, you're about 70% prime time public skate, 30% approximately
Right,
non.
right, yep.
Which,
Right. So if you compared it to some of the other neighborhood DCR rinks, you'd see that, we have much more prime time ice available.
yeah, that was the point. Now, and prime time goes from what hours to what hours?
Well, the DCR, interestingly enough, defined it in their rate increase notice. And if you look on Schedule 1B, we use their definition to calculate this, and it's Monday through Fridays from 3 p.m. until closing, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays from 7 a.m. until closing,
So those are basically times when kids are out of school.
basically.
So basically what we're saying here is 70% of the public skate time was when kids were not
Right.
in school.
Right, the only non-prime time we have are Wednesdays at noontime.
11:30 to 2:30. And it actually is, it's the same 15 to 20 people that show up, some senior citizens, some small families, so it is utilized.
And that's included in the 16 hours a week.
Yes.
And I guess the second question I have,
It's
only
included
because
in the weighted 16 hours a week.
The weighted, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
the second question I have, and again, because it's been in the papers recently, and is that Milton Youth Hockey was forced to go to South Boston. I guess it was South Boston for ice time. Can you explain how that whole scheduling thing works?
Sure.
and-
I don't know that they were forced to go to South Boston, but that would be a question for them, how that occurred. But I can talk about how scheduling occurs. One of the things we try to do is keep the same schedule from year to year as much as possible. So we do a tentative schedule, getting input from all of the users regarding what changes they would need to make. The high school and college games tend to be about the same number, but they vary in terms of, which days of a particular week they are. So we schedule those. We schedule all of the recurring time when people typically have their time. And the general manager, Kevin, works with each one of them to see what the requests are and works out a draft schedule. Then we provide those to each of the users and invite them to a meeting of all the users to talk through and say, okay, are there things we want to mutually change in this?
So the starting point then is basically what they had last year.
Correct.
And then it moves from
Right,
there.
and it tends to be a mutually agreeable process. You'd say, okay, you have these, what do you need? I know Milton Youth Hockey this past year had more teams than they had historically, so they needed more hours. And then
we actually
work with the scheduler.
Yeah, get back to the point of South Boston. I communicate constantly with Mark Hornforth, and he had mentioned to me that 2 Sunday morning hours, 7 to 8. So I actually reached out to South Shore Conference in December and said, is there any way we can actually take back a couple hours so that Milton doesn't have to travel? And we worked it out and everything. Milton Youth's they've been out of South Boston and giving them back 2 extra hours a week.
Okay, good.
So it
Good.
worked out
By
pretty
the
good.
way, I understand the South Boston rink closed due to their roof issues with the snow load.
Yeah, it's
correct?
condemned for the rest of the year.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's closed. They had roof slide onto the locker room area.
Which is the same design that the Yulin rink has, which is a sloped roof coming down on top of a flat roof. And that's the most sensitive area, and that was the area we clear first each snowstorm.
Okay, good.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, not to belabor any points, but basically, and everybody knows that, well, first of all, I guess we can say that we did get formal notice from, and I guess I'll steal your thunder a little bit. We did get formal notice from DCR that they've extended us the 1-year extension of the operating permit for the 2016 season, which, so when all the pieces fit together, we'll probably vote to do. That also includes a rate increase, and I think we talked about it at our last meeting, that there's like approximately $25 rate increase, and that's only for prime time hours.
Peak hours, right.
Hours, and public skate. Have you done any analysis on what that might be for additional revenue?
Yes, that's about $40,000, assuming users don't cut back their hours in response, assuming they stay with the same number of hours. It's
Including
about-
public skate, or
Oh,
did you
no,
not-
no.
you didn't factor in public skate at this point?
Public skating, I wasn't sure how the town wished to approach that, and I don't know what the impact of going from not charging for public skating to charging for public skating would have.
But if
on
we did,
usage.
it would clearly bring in something more than the
Yeah,
40,000.
in all likelihood, it would. There'd be costs now of collecting, you'd have to hire more people to administer
Yep.
the program, but, yeah, I would think it would be a net positive effect on trying to reduce the deficit.
And Tom, what was the requested or permitted rate increase for public skating?
Up to $5.
To $5.
Which again, for some people, that can be, a lot of money. For a lot of people, it's not, but, so an increase, assume we can keep costs relatively stable for 2016, maybe a $50,000 or $60,000 increase will go a long way.
Right, it would, right. What I calculated for tentatively for the next 12 months following this year would be about a $70,000 negative cash.
Without the increase?
With the increase, with the increase factored in, about $70,000. That includes some capital expenditures that would
Okay.
likely be necessary. so.
Okay. What types of capital expenditures are we talking about?
Well, the Zamboni
Zamboni.
is ripe for, we're experiencing trouble with the existing one. We have a loaner from the DCR currently. When we started 5 years ago, the Zamboni was near the end of its
Yes.
life, and we've been keeping it going.
Bit of bubble gum.
Yeah, pretty much. And right now, it's experiencing a problem which would likely require some significant capital expenditure work on it, which would then extend its life as well. That's being one item. Another item going forward, that the area immediately outside of the Zamboni room really needs to be repaved, to be leveled, because right now it puts a lot of stress on the machine going in and out. And that's probably a $7,000 to $10,000 item, as I recall. So those two things immediately come to mind as some things that should take place over the next 12 months.
Okay. Is that an area that, is that a large area to repave? I mean, is that something DPW can do, or?
I don't know the DPW's, scope of work, but I would expect it's something they can do.
Is that something, Tom, you could follow up on? You're really our point person on the Yulin rink.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
between you and Anne Marie and maybe Bill, check into that.
Sure.
Okay, is there anything else for the Curry
good.
representatives tonight? Or anything else you wanted to share with us?
No, just in terms of the future of Curry's relationship, that's something that the town wishes to discuss. Would be more than I'm pleased to meet with the town. It'd likely be a complex discussion, a lot of facets to operating the rink, but we'd try to do so in a manner that would accomplish and accommodate the town's wishes. But
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Guys. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
We will now return to number 6 on our agenda, which is a discussion of a warrant article regarding the plate home rule petition for a liquor license. I think I saw Mr. Sheffield and
There he is.
Suzanne. Good evening, Bob.
Good evening.
Good evening, Suzanne. Hi. This is a back-to-back performances for both of you. You were at the warrant committee last night, and we were there at the warrant committee meeting, so.
I brought treats because I know you guys sugar them up. I don't know. It's what I do.
This isn't a bribe, is it?
So
Goodness.
that'll keep you going too.
Thank
We can
you.
get some more cheers.
Right, see?
Look. No calories in looking.
I know there are people waiting outside. Fortunately, we don't have enough chairs for everyone, but if you'd like to come in and stand along the sides of the room, please feel free. Maybe we should have scheduled this meeting for another location tonight. Thank you, Anne Marie. Okay, well, while we try to get some extra chairs to accommodate the crowd, Bob and Suzanne, thank you for being with us tonight. And we're here to talk about, maybe we should just give a little bit of background, because there's been a little bit of confusion about what is actually involved with this warrant article. And some people have asked us if this is if we're issuing a liquor license tonight, and that's not the case. This is the very beginning of the process where you're asking for a home rule petition and for town meeting to approve that so that the request would go to the state legislature, which would then, if they act on it favorably, would authorize the selectmen to issue a liquor license. And we did vote earlier in the year, I think it was in January, to submit the warrant article itself. It's not a 10-citizen article. This is an article that's submitted by the Board of Selectmen at your request. So would you like to take it from there and give us a little bit of background?
I would be happy to. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm Attorney Bob Sheffield from Milton, with offices at 553 Adams Street in East Milton Square. I have with me Susan Lombardi, who is a resident of East Milton and also is the owner of the Plate located on Central Avenue in that section of the town. Suzanne has had the opportunity to become the new restaurateur at the Marketplace. To give a little bit of history, the Marketplace has had a restaurant for approximately almost 25 years now. and it's located on the second floor of the Marketplace building down there. The restaurant has always had closing hours at 9 p.m., and that has been legislated by the Board of Appeals. That is not going to change. The restaurant is going to be open for breakfast, it's going to be open for lunch, and hopefully it will be open for dinner. But they want to focus on the breakfast and lunch first, and then we'll be going on to a dinner menu. In the restaurant business, excuse me, the restaurant business is a little unique insofar as everybody comes until they have one bad meal. After they've had one bad meal, they don't come back, so you can't afford to put out a bad meal. What we are doing is we are requesting that over the long term, the selectmen have the opportunity, if it sees fit at that time, to grant a liquor license upon the application of the Marketplace. The process begins with the town meeting, and the town meeting is being asked to submit a request to the legislature to approve the granting of a site-specific liquor license. Thank you, Anthony. At that location. By site-specific, I mean that the liquor license can be used for no other location in the town of Milton. It would also be given to the management that applies for it. So if the management were transferred, if the management were changed, they would have to begin the process again and go back to the selectmen.
Would not go back to the legislator.
They would not have to go back to the legislature, but it would have to go back to the selectmen and start at ground zero there. The idea of that is to make sure that the selectmen at all times have control over the situation. We put the article in for consideration. The Warren Committee met last night and improved it by a vote of, I believe it was 12-1, that they will recommend that the town meeting vote yes. Does that mean there'll be a liquor license? No, it does not. Okay. It means it will go to town meeting, and town meeting will take a vote. If they vote yes, will there be a liquor license? No. It will then have to go to the House of Representatives and the Senate and signed by the governor. Then there will be the possibility of the grant of a liquor license, and it will be in your hands. Will you have the power to increase the closing hours till midnight or whatever? No, you won't. That is controlled by the Board of Appeals, and they very tightly hold the responsibility on that. I would imagine that when the liquor license comes up, there'll be advertisements in the newspaper, the fact of an application will be made known, and you'll be inviting the community to give input on a yes or no, or support, or fight against it. A few years ago, something came up for an Acapulco's at the wharf. I should say that I represented the developer at the wharf, and I also represented the wharf restaurant. I did not choose to represent Acapulco's. I didn't think it was a good fit, and the community was very vocal in saying that it was not a good fit, and it never came to be, primarily because that the neighbors did not feel comfortable having an Acapulco's there. So this is just the first process. By June, we hope to have a restaurant opened. By June, the community can see the impact, can see the menu, can see the chef in operation. We can make judgments, and only after those judgments are made, there's a possibility down the line that the liquor license will be requested and that a liquor license will be found to be good for the town of Milton and the East Milton community. We hope to have dialogue with the community. We hope to make the fact that we're having a new restaurant coming to Milton a headline in the news. We want to have discussion. We want everyone to know what our plan is, why we're planning it, and what time frame we're talking about. But it will be at least a year or a year and a half before a liquor license would be in the hands of the selectmen, that they could even consider it. Now I'd like to introduce the chef, manager, cook, bottle washer, and owner of the Plate at Milton Marketplace, and she can give you her ideas on the menu and her vision on what will happen. Suzanne.
Thanks, Bob. So I am a resident of Milton. I grew up in Milton and have lived here in East Milton with my daughter and husband for the last 20 years. Not my daughter for 20 years, but I have 30 years in the food industry. I've built out 6 professional kitchens, launched 2 successful wholesale companies, building them from the ground up and selling them both for profit. Community involvement's important to me. When we opened the Plate on Central Avenue 3 years ago, I was really stubborn, looking for space, and wanted to open my restaurant in Milton. It was important for me to work in the town that I live in, and I really felt like there was a big void in the town for the kind of food that the Plate offers. The Plate, for those of you who have never been in there, is a small neighborhood food shop. It offers delicious handcrafted sandwiches, soups, homemade baked goods. We're open at that location Tuesday through Saturday, 8 to 4 p.m., and on Sundays from 8 to 3. Our first 3 years, we've received enormous amounts of accolades in press. We have outstanding, loyal customers who are really excited about the food that we make fresh every day, and we hear that they want more of it. Our customers are well-educated food lovers, neighbors who like simple, honest, high-integrity foods, handcrafted with love right here in Milton. So I guess to answer the question a little bit of what to expect at the Plate at Milton Marketplace, we have a look and feel for you, a footprint where, as Bob had said, the restaurant at the Marketplace had been operating for about 20 years, and we are, along with the team over at the Marketplace, jumping into a whole renovation of that space upstairs, and a well-needed renovation. So we're adding lots of natural light. We're opening up the kitchen. It was our idea and concept to really shift it from the more traditional restaurant that it had been operating as, and to really use the space in a way that would give customers a way to eat there or take out. So we're adding a full-service espresso bar. We'll be doing some smoothies, some juicing. We will have some of the prepared foods that we have at our current location to take out. And we're just really excited to be able to offer a bigger extension of what we're doing in our 800 square foot space on Central Avenue up at the Marketplace. We work with local farms. We believe in really showcasing local producers. We'll be working with a local company that's smoking its own bacon. We make all of our all of our food from scratch. So unlike the other restaurants in town, I think what distinguishes us is that we make our own mayonnaise by hand. Maybe not the most financially viable way of operation, but certainly one that is important to myself and my staff who work at the plate. So the idea of a liquor license for us is really not about a bar room. There's no bar that's going to be built into our space. The idea is to really offer a few carefully selected, handcrafted beers and organic wines to really enhance customers' experience with our handcrafted food. Seating in the Milton Marketplace will be approximately 42 to 47 when the build-out is all said and done. We hope to be able to use the space in some exciting ways before we open up for dinner, and that's to really offer some cooking classes. We're tossing around some fun ideas about doing cookbook clubs, taking advantage of some of the exciting cookbooks that are out, inviting the community to come in, cook from those, sit down, eat, hopefully enjoy wine while we do that. And so to really transform the space and use it in a way that will bring the community in, other than just a sit-down sort of restaurant. What else? Yeah, I mean, I think that we really differentiate ourselves from other restaurants in the neighborhood. The Plate at Central Ave was the first chef-owned restaurant in Milton. I think that makes a huge difference. Steel and Rye also is chef-owned. And I'm on site all the time. I mean, our customers come in, we have an open kitchen there, and we engage in all kinds of conversation: food, community, what's seasonal, what Brookwood Farm dropped off that day. We're not a restaurant that's really going to be the place where you come after work and have cocktails. The liquor license is really about celebrating craft beer, craft wine, and really pairing it with the kind of food that we're known for and that we're gonna be serving at the Plate. The hours of operation there, like Bob said, I mean, I'm somebody who has a lot of experience in this industry. I want to do things right. You get one chance to open the doors. I should say, this time around, to open a restaurant in Milton with the kind of anticipation and excitement we have from our customers is awesome. I mean, we are now a known brand in town where we weren't 3 years ago, and people really, I think, are anticipating something great. So my hope is that we blow the doors off that. So we're opening for breakfast and lunch. We'll be there 7 days a week. We're going to open at 6:30 in the morning to capture the commuter traffic. Also, we'll be able to offer all of the women at Fitness Unlimited a place to hop over and get a juice and socialize after their workout in the morning. So the idea was to be really thoughtful about that location, about the neighborhood, about how we could really use that space in a way that it hadn't been used in the past. Sunday, so 6:30 to 5:30 p.m. to start. Sunday brunch will be 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. With the idea of expanding hours to include dinner once we feel like we have our sea legs under us and we're ready to do that.
And this is until you get a liquor license. After that, you'll extend the hours, right?
Correct.
Questions or comments? All of us were at the warrant committee last night, so we heard a lot of discussion
Right,
last
I
night about
don't
it.
wanna
And some
be
of the
too
people who are
redundant.
here may have been at the warrant committee last night also to hear some of the, that was a pretty lengthy discussion and a lot of questions that the warrant committee had. Do we have other comments or questions we want to ask?
I've got a few, yeah. First of all, I guess a comment that when we issue a liquor license, we have a lot of discretion. We can put virtually any condition we want into a liquor license. We can't change your hours of operations, but we could change the hours that you can serve alcohol. We have that authority. We have the authority to do virtually anything we want in terms of restricting the use of it. So based upon feedback that we would get at a public hearing. So I just want to make that clear that it's not, you know, if we put a condition that there be no, that it be a service bar only, then that's all it can be without coming back to this board and asking for a change in it.
That's understood. I mentioned the hours because of the fact I had heard somebody throw out that, oh yeah, you'll open till 9 o'clock and then within 3 months you'll be staying open till midnight. That's not the case, and that's not the plan. And that's why I mentioned that even the selectmen could not enlarge that.
No.
Can you put restrictions on it? You can put all sorts of restrictions on it, and that's fine, and that's the way it should be, because this is going to be a community restaurant. It's going to be servicing the community, and I hope it represents the East Milton community.
Okay. Second question I have, and it's more of a question than a comment, and this is Suzanne. Obviously, you're an experienced restaurateur. How important is a liquor license to a higher-end sit-down restaurant for both lunch and dinner? Obviously, not many people of the mimosas, I guess, drink at breakfast, but how important is it to the success of a restaurant that is serving a higher-end?
Are you speaking more so about lunch or just?
Lunch and dinner, I guess.
Yeah.
Or brunch.
I mean, important from a financial point of view, I mean.
The success of a restaurant, I guess, yeah.
I think the way that I look at craft beer, small batch wine, is the same way that I look at producers who are, you know, smoking their own bacon and smoking their own fish, all of which are products that we buy. With the expansion of the plate at the Milton Marketplace, you know, I am the chef. And for me, the beer and the wine piece is, I don't know how to say
Ancillary?
it. Yeah, it's part of the whole experience there. The plate at Central Avenue is a takeout. We have seating for 10, bench seating. So to really go into something that's a more involved endeavor, that we're investing more money in, and obviously more time, you know, I was excited by that. That's why we decided to go forward with this project. We were lucky in that the team that runs the Milton Marketplace came to us to offer us the space first. And that really came through, from what I understand, vendors that recommended us, customers that wanted a more expansive experience than what they're getting in 800 square feet. So in order to expand that experience, I guess, to get back to the original question, it's really about tapping into these smaller craft beers, wines, to really round out the experience that I want to give customers, and I feel like is missing from the community and the neighborhood.
Okay, my next question, and you may not have any knowledge of this, but I'll ask it anyways, and maybe Bob will. Currently, the Fruit Center has run limited dinners at, some of them are wine tasting dinners.
Right.
Some of them are cooking class kind of dinners. But all of those have had one-day liquor licenses served it. Any idea what the experience has been there in terms of, has there ever been any problems there? Has there been any problems with traffic? How many people do they get at those? You know, I mean, obviously, right now, it's a bigger restaurant than what you're contemplating seating-wise.
Correct. Correct. We are actually, we'll have less seating than the
Right.
restaurant.
So I'm just curious what the experience, even though it's on a limited basis, what the experience may have been with those.
My understanding is they were fairly successful. There has never been a problem associated with it as far as any neighborhood complaints or any issues of somebody being later involved in an accident or anything along that line. They have been part of the offering. Part of the difference is the Magnosa family runs the Milton Marketplace, and the Magnosa family itself ran the restaurant. And now it's a little bit more separation. So they will be working together, but not as husband and wife as it has been in the past.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is, you know, I heard that people really enjoyed that opportunity. I think that people want to stay within their community. When I was looking for space for the original plate, I worked with brokers every now and then. And when I would describe the concept of the restaurant, they tried to put us in Jamaica Plain, in Roslingdale, and all of that would have worked, but I really feel like there's a big part of our community that doesn't want to necessarily drive to those neighborhoods to experience the kind of concept that we have in, you know, on paper and have laid out for this new space. So, I mean, the success of those wine dinners, I think, just speaks to that. That people, it's, you know, again, it's not, and I love to let loose and have cocktails every now and then. I work really hard, but, you know, the wine dinner experience is not about, you know, slugging back glasses of wine and, you know.
Of tasting wine and food.
Yeah, it's about tasting wine and food, exactly. So that's the importance of the liquor license in this space and concept.
I would like to add that when I first represented Abbey Park, Stella's Restaurant was the high-class restaurant in the area. We've come a long way insofar as you know, after Abbey Park, we had the Wharf, we have Steel and Rye. Milton has become a destination community for people that enjoy food. And I think that's thrilling and exciting. And I think this is another step in that same direction. And it will entice more people to visit and appreciate the fine things Milton has to offer.
Suzanne, have you had neighborhood meetings? Have you had them?
This is just the beginning, like Bob said, where as of today, we don't even have a building permit for that space. So the date for opening is really up in the air right now. We're saying mid-June, but as everybody knows who's gone through construction, it could be longer. So this is the start of sharing our vision, our idea, and, you know, I'm going to work with Bob to do all kinds of neighborhood discussions. I mean, I'm a completely transparent person. We are not trying to slip anything by anybody in terms of what our plans are for this space. So I am open to it. I know that I'm doing a half-hour interview on public access with My Town Matters. We have told the Milton Times, that as soon as we had a building permit and a better sense of opening date, we would speak with them. I went to the first meeting of the East Milton Neighborhood Association, not because I'm opening a business in there, but because I am a neighbor. So I plan and assume that there'll be lots of discussion through that organization as well.
Before May, before the May town meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. There's one thing, my son is a writer, and he says that you don't do the book tour until the book is in the bookstand. This is a situation where we want to get the word out completely before the Maytown meeting so that the people that are making a judgment and casting a vote will know all about it. We hope to have neighborhood meetings, and we hope that East Milton particularly goes unanimously for it.
In particular, the abutters.
In particular, the neighbors and abutters. I mean, the Magnoso family has been very, very sensitive about the neighbors, and every time I get down there in the morning, I see that sign, "You will not cross this line to deliver anything before 8 o'clock." And they, that was in the rule book, but boy, that's enforced. And it should be enforced because they're in a residential neighborhood. Actually, we want the crescendo to be when it opens, but we want everybody to be knowledgeable about what is coming up in the town meeting and what is being requested, what the impact is, and why it's being requested.
Yeah, I'm a developer in the Boston area, and I can't build a doghouse without 20 meetings.
That's right.
With the neighbors.
That's right.
So this is a liquor license going into a residential neighborhood, so
Yes.
it's important that you have multiple meetings.
It is interesting. I mean, it clearly is a residential neighborhood, but if you look at the history of back before any of us were even thought of, that has been a commercial. I mean, it was the car barn for the trolleys at one point in time that used to run through East Milton Square. So it's always been a commercial
No, I get it.
building in a residential area.
But remember,
But now with
the
liquor
underlying
licenses.
No liquor
zoning,
licenses,
the
no.
underlying zoning for Milton is residential.
Correct.
When I represented Granite Links, the only thing you could build on a dump is a single-family residence, okay? And that's because everything was single-family residence. They made an exception because you can't build a single-family residence on a landfill. But this is zoned single-family residence, but it's been in commercial use for probably at least 150 years.
Right. Right.
Bob and Suzanne, I had the same comment Dennis did, and we've let you know that we've received some emails from
By all
residents in the area
Yep.
on some of the side streets who have some concerns. I think what they have really is questions at this point. So it sounds like you're starting now to do some of the outreach that is really needed for the, you've probably already started, but you're doing some of the outreach that's going to be needed here. And could you, I don't know whether, Bob, you can speak to this or whether this is the Magnosa's attorney, but I understand there were questions last night about the expansion of the parking lot. Now, that's not going to be before this board. That's going to be before the Board of Appeals. And
Right.
that has been filed, but there's been no hearing yet, is that?
Okay, my understanding on this, and I may be wrong, is that somebody came to the Milton Marketplace and said, we have a budding property and you have the right of first refusal or something. What they're planning to do is to buy some property that is adjacent to the parking lot now, I'm not sure exactly where it is, use it for employee parking only. Which is the least problematic use of any parking because people are there for the longer duration, and free up more spaces in the parking lot because you want people to be able to park right in front of where they're going. If they're going to CVS drugstore, you'd like to be able to have them park right before the drugstore. This having employees park in a different spot will add to the number of spaces and make it more convenient for people to come to the Milton Marketplace. That's all I know.
Okay.
I might just add that that has nothing to do with the plate, and I think that there's some confusion there. It just happens to be that this landowner, from the little bit I know, approached the marketplace at the same time we have committed to go into that restaurant. But, I mean, there's 182, I think, parking spaces in their existing lot. We're looking to seat 42 to 45 people. I mean, there's no reason that we need the marketplace to expand that parking. So I just wanted to, be on the record and sort of say that.
That's a different issue than this home rule petition
It's
for the liquor
totally
license.
unrelated.
Another different issue is one that came up last night, which is the hours. And you touched on this, Bob, but what the Board of Appeals did back in November, and this was a noticed hearing that the Board of Appeals had before them, and they had, I guess, one resident who spoke in support and no residents who opposed it. We have a copy of the decision. And they increased the morning hours from 8, they pushed it back from 8 o'clock until 6:30 in the morning
That's correct.
for the restaurant use for the morning commute. But even though the prior restaurant closed, I think, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the permit that was issued in 1991 by the Board of Appeals allowed the restaurant to be open until 9 o'clock at night. So the authority to open the restaurant was there. It's just that the prior restaurant did not have a dinner service, other than these one-time event, like the one-day liquor licenses that we've issued for different dinners and different events there at the restaurant. So that just needs to be
I think it was
clarified,
opened
because
a little
we
more
have
than
gotten some
that.
comments from people about those two issues, and those are not before this board. That's the Board of Appeals that's hearing both anything to do with the hours or the parking. That's all under the variance that the Board of Appeals issued. So we should just clarify that. I should note, too, before we get to your next comment, Tom, we also have gotten comments in support of the plate and the proposed home rule petition. We've gotten comments on both sides. So the fact that you're going to be doing a lot of this media attention and talking with some of the residents in the area is a good thing.
Since you're talking about hours, the 9 o'clock closing, is that a hard close? In other words, the doors lock at 9 o'clock?
Yes.
Everybody has to be out?
That's a hard close.
Okay.
That's a hard close.
Okay.
In other words, we're not going to begin to close at 9 o'clock.
You are closed?
We are closed. People
are out, doors are locked?
Right.
Okay.
The CVS has 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there will be still cars in the parking lot.
So for
but
dinner
not-
service, if you say, first, if you were going to do a sit-down dinner service, most you could probably do is 2 table turns.
Oh, at most.
And our vision is really, on trend with sort of shared small plates, that kind of dining. So it's not it's not a restaurant like a Abbey Park where you're going to go sit,
Suppose.
linger over courses. Again, we're offering something that's different than what's in the neighborhood already.
I want to add one other thing about the timing of this process, and Bob, you mentioned this at the beginning, but there have been some questions that I've gotten, and I'm sure both of you have gotten as well, about how, as I said at the beginning, some people thought we were going to be issuing a liquor license tonight. And clearly, that's not I think we've addressed that. Mr. Chan's and the new theater restaurant that's still, hasn't even, both of them sought a home rule petition. The theater building was last May's town meeting. Mr. Chan's was, I think, even the October before that. They took some time going through the legislature. Neither one of them has yet submitted an application to this board. So that should give people a sense of what the timing here is, that it's a year or more in order to, between the time the warrant article gets submitted, we go through the town meeting process, the state legislature, assuming the town meeting approves it, it's a long period of time. So people should just be aware of that, because there has been some confusion out there.
And I think that's healthy, because I think that will give the community time to evaluate the new menu, the new chef, the new operation, and how they feel towards it.
So the warrant committee took a vote on this last night. They're in a little bit of a different situation. They have to go to print at the end of the month, and they could recommend in favor, they could recommend against, or they could just say, we're not ready to make a recommendation yet, we'll make one in May. There's really nothing requiring us to vote on this tonight. And my recommendation, I think, to the board, as the chair, would be that we let Suzanne and Bob start having some of these discussions with the neighbors, seeing if there can be some kind of consensus built up on some of the issues, and hopefully the neighborhood meetings will be productive and will produce some good agreement on some of these issues. There's nothing requiring us to vote tonight. We could take a vote if a member wanted to make a motion, but it's also possible just to take this under advisement and hear further as we go along through the next couple of months where you're at and how things are going. But I'd be happy to hear what both of you think about that.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, personally, I'm always happy to see increased commerce in the business district, and this is certainly, that, and to that extent, I'm clearly in favor of anything that makes the business district more vibrant and a better experience. So it will do that.
It's our article, so again, it's not a citizen article, it's a selectman's article. So at some point, this is one of the later ones at town meeting, so it'll probably be the last night of town meeting when this comes up. So at some point, we'll have to take a vote on whether we support, an article that we submitted. But I think we have a couple of months to make that decision.
I think that's true, and I think when town meeting comes, we have 44 articles before it to decide, and this will become Article 45, I believe. Although it's an important one, everything at town meeting is important, and I think most of the time town meeting comes to the right conclusion. I hope it does here.
Okay, well, thank you both for being here tonight. Does anyone from the board have any other comments or questions? Anything else that either of you would like to add?
I'd just like to reiterate the fact that there has been a restaurant here for the past 20-something years. The seating is actually going to be reduced, so the number of cars coming in and going out will probably be, if anything, less. Okay, the other thing is, if and when there is a bar, there's not going to be a sit-down bar. There's not going to be people coming in to use it as a bar facility. And the final thing is, knowing Suzanne as I have for the last 3+ years, she is picky and she is very conscientious. She's not going to go into this until she has it down right. And I think that the people of Milton are going to be very, very pleased with what they see.
Even the neighborhood representative last night said that they're looking forward to the restaurant opening. The issue here is the liquor license. It's not the breakfast or the lunch menu, and they're all looking forward to that, according to him. So I think we're all looking forward to the restaurant opening. And
excellent, and I thank you.
thank you very much. This has been a good introduction. There's a lot, believe it or not, there's a lot of people who watch these meetings. So I think the word will, between the warrant committee meeting last night and this meeting tonight, the word will start getting out. And we wish you lots of success with a lot of the meetings you're having and the discussions.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Suzanne.
I'll wait.
Okay, let's take a minute or two for the room to just, there's a lot of people here who are going to leave, and we have some other people in the hall waiting to come in, so we'll take a moment before we move on to the next item on our agenda.
Good.
Is the town accountant? She's coming? Okay. I know. Yeah, we've got an overflow crowd tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here. A lot of representation from East Milton tonight.
Very good, right?
Thank you, Mike.
Good.
Thank you.
Should have Peter to walk it down with.
On to the east.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. In a moment, we're going to be joined by our town accountant, Amy Dexter. Here she is. Amy, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Amy.
Hi.
And we're going to talk about the capital budget. Now, depending on where this discussion goes, let me just mention, when we met at a previous meeting to approve the initial recommendation of the capital committee, we voted a bottom line budget. And we've got a couple of different proposed motions. This is an increase on the bonded side.
Yes.
Does the board, Tom and Amy are the co-chairs of the capital committee. Are you planning on having a discussion about this? Because if you are, I'm probably going to be recused since it's just bonded. We don't have non-bonded in this particular item tonight.
I don't think there's going to be any big discussion. I mean, I wasn't planning on one.
No, I wasn't either, unless you
Okay,
guys
we have the
had
written
questions.
information. Do you want to have a discussion on this?
I just
Dennis?
had a quick question. Who came up with the $200,000 number, Tom?
That was coming from Joe and from Joe Lynch and from
Trace.
Trace. That's what the makeup money they needed to do the two separate buildings.
Right. So one is the DPW locker room, and the other is the cemetery garage.
Yep.
But
Just
just,
but they're both break rooms, aren't they?
One's a garage.
Oh, it's a garage, okay, yeah.
yeah.
So,
But they physically got estimates from contractors? Or is it
Yes.
just from
Trace
experience?
has
they-
a hard estimate, I think, and,
Trace has bids in hand.
yeah.
Joe isn't at that stage yet. The initial appropriation back a couple, I don't remember the date, wasn't enough for them to do both projects. So this is supplemental to get them to a total of, that they need to do both of those projects.
Right. Well, I've been in the DPW locker room. It's
Pretty disgusting.
disgusting. Really needs to be done.
So
Remind me, where's this money coming from?
Well, that's a discussion for, at this point, it would be recommended for bonding. There may be another way to do it, but I think we'll have to discuss that.
So we're going to, we're going to approve this money, but we don't know where the money is coming from yet. Is that correct?
We're approving the
No.
capital project.
Yeah, so we have, it's classified in the capital committee's request as under the bonded items. We have two categories. We have bonded and non-bonded. It's been put into the bonded.
Right.
So I was going to propose that we vote a new total because we voted a bottom line budget for this the last time.
That's fine.
But if you want to have a separate vote on the bonded, I'm going to step out of
No,
the
I
room.
don't think it's.
I don't
mean,
think it's necessary.
We're approving the capital projects. I mean, even though it goes in what we call quote-unquote a bonding article, that doesn't necessarily mean those projects are bonded. There could be grants that fund them. There could be a lot of things other than floating a bond issue that pays for those projects.
Okay, so the accountant has given us a revised bottom line number of $1,859,780, which is $200,000 more than the amount we voted, I think, 2 meetings ago.
What's the number again, Katie? 1 million?
$1,859,780. So do we have a
Do you
motion?
need a new motion for that?
Yes.
So I'll move to approve a recommendation of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee in the amount of $1,859,780 for FY16 for the...
I think you can just stop the motion there because that's the total, because the rest of this is the...
In total, okay.
Yeah.
Which includes the 200,000.
Second.
Okay, then any discussion on the motion?
Also.
Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
For
Amy.
reading tonight. All right, we're going to recess the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We have members of our Historical Commission who are here, so we're going to convene a meeting of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund. We will return to the Selectmen's meeting once we complete our meeting with the Historical Commission. So we have several members here from the Historical Commission. If they'd like to join us, hopefully we didn't send all the chairs away. Please feel free to bring a chair up to the table. No.
Yeah, good.
No, this is open session. And we have some refreshments still at the table here, so
Great, plenty of them.
Please.
And they're good.
pass them around the audience, and anyone who'd like to, I think one box has made it around the audience, maybe we'll send another one
That's not
around.
bribery, is it?
Sorry?
That's not bribery, is it?
We needed a
That's
beer to
why
go
we're
with it,
sending
though,
it to
that's
the
the problem.
audience, Steve. So,
Good evening.
good evening.
I'm Steve O'Donnell, Chairman of the Historical Commission, and with me tonight is Meredith Hall, Linda Weld, and Wally Sisson.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for waiting out in the hall tonight, many of you, standing out there for about an hour.
Thank you for giving us some time tonight. We know that this whole town farm situation is ongoing, hopefully approaching a conclusion. But we also feel it's not too early to begin thinking about what happens when this process is concluded. We feel very strongly that the trustees should retain the 4 acres and the buildings thereon, and hopefully also the pest house might come back on the property. The site walk last year showed us that even though the buildings had been unused and essentially derelict for 10 or more years, they are sound, they can be rehabilitated, renovated, and used for housing. The 4 acres might also present the opportunity to build additional units. It's a little premature for that. We expect that the trustees don't want to be in the real estate business.
Too late.
They don't want to be, well, notwithstanding. They don't want to be contractors, they don't want to be rental housing managers. Yet, they would like to keep control, we hope, over the property in order to be sure that it is preserved as it should be. There are a number of options for redevelopment of the property which would not burden the trustees, but which would give them the opportunity to control what goes on with the property. And that's what we wanted to discuss a little bit with you tonight. Linda?
I have to go back a few months. I think it was last spring that we had Sally Zimmerman and a colleague of hers from Historic New England come to visit us about the Eustis Estate. And it just so happened that I'd been reading their newsletter and saw one of their articles about their stewardship program. So since they were there, I said I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you're here and ask you about some questions about this. And I said, did you know that Milton has this town farm property? And they were right on top of that. They said, of course we know all about that. I was sure, knew more than I did, and they said, we'd love to help you with the town farm if it ever gets to that point. So I just sort of kept that in the back of my mind, and then a little later we had the site walk. And then last fall, I'm an architect, and the Boston Society of Architects Historic Resources Committee had a meeting that was focused on the Milton Town Farm, and I thought, this is really interesting, and maybe it's a meeting that I should go to, even though it's 8 o'clock in the morning in downtown Boston, I'm supposed to be someplace else completely, because I thought, well, I can only learn something about this from a number of architects who are experienced in historic preservation, have experience with rehabbing properties. So I went basically as a spectator to learn some more about Milton's Town Farm and about possibilities for preservation or rehabbing buildings. And in fact, I really did learn a lot. There was a fellow, I think his name was Dave Kellner, Kelman, who's a realtor in Boston, who made the presentation. He did a very poor job. It was really quite embarrassing about how much he didn't know about the town farm and what the status of the project was. So I was sitting in the back over there somewhere and said, if any of you have ideas that could help us advance the discussion about what's happening with the town farm, get in touch with me. And in fact, a half a dozen people followed me out of the meeting and gave me cards and said, call me, call me, call me. This is exactly the kind of project that I have experience with. And so I did call a number of people. And the starting point, I think, is to consider the notion that these properties are ripe for listing on the National Historic Register, and that does not preclude doing things with them. And I think Edie Clifford, who attends our meetings, has often said, when we ask her, so if it's on the Historic Register, what does that mean? And she said, not much, really, in terms of what you can do with the buildings. So along with Wally, I started doing a little bit of looking into what listing the buildings on the Historic Register might mean. And Wally started out with copying some of the things that are available online, but I made copies out of things that, just because I think it's a good starting point to think about how the listing on the National Historic Register might be important for these buildings. And what I learned from other members of the Historic Resources Committee was that, in fact, listing the buildings enhances their value.
Well, first thing is about historic rehab credits.
Exactly so, exactly so. So the contractors look at the buildings and say, wow, if I do this, this, and this, it helps my bottom line. I can actually make the buildings
It
usable.
has to be commercial in nature, so it had to be the rental or
Right, it has
commercial.
to be, yeah, it can't be owner-occupied, basically. But there isn't necessarily a bottom line that says, you can never change anything in this building because it's a historic building. And the other part of that is our discussion with Historic New England, Sally Zimmerman and her colleague, who said, we'd love to help you think about easements that would let us think about what's important to preserve and what can go away. Obviously, the buildings have been used for years and years and years, so things have been changed to make them usable. So maybe that kitchen or bathroom has no historic value, and Historic New England is saying, so, that's not something that you're going to want to preserve anyway. So that's where we can help you decide what's worth putting an easement on and what's not worth putting an easement on. So I think the two pieces of Historic New England being able to help us think about what easements might enhance the value of the property in the eyes of a developer, and the notion that it doesn't have to, it actually has the opposite effect of enhancing the value of the properties to put them on the National Historic Register, might be a starting point. And if you guys are interested at all, I'd love to get some more people who are experienced with doing this kind of work, or even the people from Historic New England who are going to be in town more and more with the Eustis Estate, help us think through what some of the possibilities might be for the future.
Are you sure these buildings would qualify?
As I understand it from what Edie said, is that Mass Historical Commission thinks they do.
Yeah, and once they get on either the Mass or the Federal Register, then they're eligible for the historic rehab credit.
And grants.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and
grants. You're right.
grants,
You're
that's right, that's very important as well.
If you do, and obviously that credit is a huge credit. So not only do you, as a business owner of the building, get to depreciate the building 100%, but you also get a credit, money back in your pocket, equal to, I think it's about 80% of the rehab costs of the building.
I don't think it's 80%.
It's a pretty high percentage.
Well, you've got some of the information there, and I think that this is just a starting point of what the real possibilities are.
The question is...
As I found out from going to this meeting, people were following me out of the door saying, I've done this, here's my card, call me, and let's talk about what the possibilities are. So there are lots of people with experience and expertise that I don't have, but would love to get involved and have them come and talk to you and get real experience and real numbers about what the possibilities are for using the buildings, and also conserving their presence in the town. I get more and more worried the longer I am on the committee, and I'm the newest member. No, I'm not. I'm sorry, Ted is.
Ted is.
But I'm pretty new, and it's sad to watch how many historic buildings Milton is losing, because it's up to the owner to make the move to list it as a historic building. In this case, you guys, the trustees are the owners.
So these buildings are not on any register right now?
No, but they're eligible. According to what Edie Clifford tells us, Massachusetts Historical Commission thinks they're eligible.
They're listed with the Massachusetts Historical Commission.
Well, that's what I meant. So they are on some
Massachusetts,
register.
but not federal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the town farm is a historic site as far
Are they
as...
on your register, the Milton? Okay, so Milton and Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, yeah.
And the next one would be
Federal.
Yeah. And that's actually, interestingly enough, a function of the National Park Service. So, the possibility of thinking about how the National Park Service interprets these sites or thinks about these sites, it's really, really interesting for the town of Milton, I think. But the sad thing being about on the Historical Commission is watching the buildings that we're losing, where we really only have the demolition delay power. But you guys are the owners. So this is a different situation. We can't necessarily say to somebody whose house is historic, don't touch the exterior, don't touch this, don't touch that. They'll just say, not interested. But it's up to the owners to take this action. And I think in the eyes of many people whose communities have historic buildings, it really does enhance the value of other properties in the communities. And I think Milton can't afford to lose more historic buildings.
When were they built, do you know? Does anybody know?
End of the 19th century,
Right.
post-Civil War, but maybe some is one of the buildings or so is later 19th century. But in that probably in the last quarter of the 19th century.
The pest house is probably the oldest.
Is that
It's been altered significantly, but it's one of the oldest.
You know, one of the comments that you made, Mr. Kahane, at a meeting we were at a couple of weeks ago was sometimes a developer or an owner can make more money by
donating?
donating. Well, this isn't exactly donating, but a small contractor may be able to make more money by using the tax credits than he can by renovating and renting or even selling. And we'll throw out the idea that the developer of the rest of the property in the town farm is not going to pay any attention to a tax credit. It's too small for a big organization like Pulte. A small contractor would benefit greatly. A large contractor wouldn't want to be bothered. We've also seen situations where contractors go into a historic building and they say they're going to renovate it, and then once they own it and get in there, oh, well, it's really too difficult, it's too expensive, we can't do it. So that's why we feel it's very important not only to retain the 4 acres, but to retain the buildings thereon.
By getting a federal designation.
Well, this is one way to do it.
But if you did get a federal designation, does that eliminate the 9-month demolition delay?
Well, the town is exempt from the town is exempt, and I suspect the trustees would be
We'll say
exempt.
if the land had to be sold, and what they were designated as federal
I think they
landmarks.
would not. It would not change the demolition delay.
I don't know, but.
So you still have the right to demolish after?
After 9
Yes,
months.
it would, unless we imposed some restrictions on it. And nobody is going to impose any restrictions.
Right.
I mean, Historic New England, if they came in with a preservation easement, the trustees could do that. But there's a number of different layers here, there's a number of different angles, and that's why we wanted to kind of throw it out early, so that as you're doing your thinking along the way, edging hopefully towards a conclusion on the majority of the property, all right, what's going to happen with the rest of it? Are we going to be stuck with this thing and we have to maintain it? No, not necessarily, but you can still ensure its preservation.
Are there any state grants, like being on the Massachusetts Historical Register?
I don't know.
There
probably
are.
some.
Actually, I was involved with the Forbes House Museum for a number of years, and I wrote a grant proposal. It's Mass Historic Preservation Projects Fund, and they fund different levels. For the Forbes House Museum, we were looking at using the barn and carriage house, and all we applied for in grant money was a feasibility study from an architect to look at using the carriage house for programs, how much would it cost, and then I sort of stepped it back to say, well, if we put that much money into the carriage house and barn, how many events would we have to have over years to pay for that?
Many of those grants are matching grants, too, I know that.
Right. Before I was even going to put my time into writing the grant, I said all of the trustees have to commit to putting in, I think it was $15,000, because then we would get another $15,000 from Mass Historic Preservation Project Fund. But that was just for a feasibility study. They do have other grants, but you're absolutely right, it's
A lot of
matching
them are.
funds.
And
It's
that's
matching
where
funds.
community preservation comes in
Yeah,
handy. That's
yeah.
your match. But-
Yeah. But I'd love to, I mean, it was just such a wonderful eye-opener to have all these people say, I've done this, here are some ideas, I'd love to come in and talk to you guys about my experience in working on this kind of a project. But it really does take the commitment to looking in more deeply into what's involved, because I think right up front, the notion usually is, oh gee, these preservation easements or even listing on a register means I can't do anything with my house or my whatever the building happens to be. And I remember a number of years ago talking to Edie Clifford and asking her, so what does that really mean? And she said, not a lot. And if you look at this little handout, it really puts most of the decision-making in the hands of the people who are at the community level or the state level and not the national level. But the national register means that then you can go ahead with the tax, what's the word?
Credits.
The tax credits and also grants. So the encouraging part is Historic New England saying, we'd love to work with you on the poor farm. And now that they're in town, I think we should take advantage of them.
I think they could be a good resource here.
They're a
Yes, they're a
terrific
terrific
resource.
resource.
They're a terrific resource. And I think of anything that's happened in the past few years, as I watch these buildings fall, I keep thinking, yes, now Historic New England is going to be the real catalyst for getting people interested in the fact that there's not just one building in town, but there's the Forbes House Museum and there's the Swift Hat Shop, and we'll finally get some critical mass, and it will enhance the community.
I think the board does want to work with you and your other colleagues on the Historical Commission on some of these projects, and you just mentioned the Swift Hat Shop, and Linda's one of our appointees for the Swift Hat Shop later tonight, so we're glad to see some movement there, and Steve has been very helpful in getting us some people to serve on this new committee. You know that we're still under due diligence period with Pulte,
Oh, yes,
so
yeah.
until that really plays itself out, there's probably nothing immediately that we can do, but we can certainly be thinking about it and talking with you a little more about some of these ideas.
Right, and that's kind of, I am only hearing through the commission what's going on with Pulte, but I did want to take the opportunity to let you know that there's experience, and in fact, if there's more knowledge about what other possibilities are, let's get talking about it so that you have that at least in the general picture of possibilities of things that could happen.
I mean, I'd clearly love to figure out a way to save the buildings.
Yes, I think we all would.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
I agree.
that goes without saying. I mean, we have a lot of hurdles that we'd have to overcome in terms of, what is the use, we probably have to go back again to the Attorney General, assuming that the use was not for the poor of Milton. I mean, the use could be that, if you could find a developer that would do it, but probably unlikely. Probably unlikely that you're going to get 100%, affordable housing restricted to Milton residents only, even if it did have a historic rehab credit with it. You could have a historic rehab credit along with the low-income housing tax credit on there. Then you've got all kinds of money for a developer. But again, it's what the neighborhood. So you got neighborhood issues, because if it's going to be a rehab credit, then it can't be home ownership. It's either going to be rental housing or it's going to be commercial. That's all you can do to entice a developer with a rehab credit. Then you've got the AG problem, and we got the Pulte problem. So we got a lot of problems to overcome.
We do, but on that note, the town planning director is here, and Bill, could you come up to one of the microphones so that they can hear you on TV? But Bill can give us just probably a brief update of someone who's gone out to look at the buildings at the suggestion of our former town administrator, John Cronin. Bill.
Now you got to repeat what you just said.
Could you just give us an update on on Mr. Cronin's suggestion of sending somebody out to look at it, and where we're at with that?
We've found 2 architects from town to take and go out and look at it. The architects went out, came up with some suggestions. Bill Ritchie and I went out, the Director of Consolidated Facilities went out, looked at the buildings, toured the buildings with the 2 architects. They came back and asked for floor plans of the buildings, which we did not have. We actually used the interns that we have down at DPW in the engineering department to come up with floor plans. I shipped the floor plans out to the 2 architects. I got back one set of plans from one of them, and we haven't gotten in touch with the second one yet. They were preliminary plans. There were some ideas. How many units could you get in the main house? How many units can you put in the other house? They were the only 2 buildings that we looked at. The The barn itself, we've pretty much written off as, it's not, you can't save it. It would cost you more to repair it than it is to save it. It's not built, it's not post and beam built, it's stick built, so it doesn't have any real, the outside image of the building may look historic, but the inside construction is not. It is several additions added to it over time. Some of those same additions have been removed over time. The sills are gone, the ridgepole is gone, the interior supports are gone. It's got serious water damage. Literally, the only thing holding it up are those 2x6s that are propping up the outside walls. The weight of the roof is going to make it implode. I'm shocked that it didn't happen this winter, except that it has a slate roof, and the slate roof usually sheds versus keeping the snow on the roof. The pest house, we didn't look at it at all. Mr. Fitzgerald lives there, so we didn't actually go near it. We just concentrated on the two main houses.
And for those of us who were on the tour last spring, which includes many of the historical folks, they're pretty big. There's quite a lot of rooms, especially in the main Alms house. It's a lot bigger than one would think.
Yes.
So you're waiting to hear back from the second architect?
We are. Then we'll get them together and have a...
That might give us a preliminary idea of what some potential restoration ideas are.
Which way we want to
Reuse.
think about having them work.
Thank you, Bill.
Wally, anything else? Thank you very much. Food for thought, if nothing else, because you have
That's
nothing
great.
else to think about, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But going
absolutely.
forward, these are opportunities that it might be worth pursuing.
I think we all look forward to working with you,
Thanks, Mary.
you and the commission on this, when we get to the right
When you get there.
time. But this is a good time to start thinking about these things, so we're glad you brought it up. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. All right, so we'll adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Governor
So
Stoughton
moved.
trustees?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we're back to our recessed Board of Selectmen meeting. The next item on that agenda is a discussion of the town administrator warrant article. Okay, we have two revisions. Town councils. Right, so we,
Two revisions since yesterday? or-
no, well, one since yesterday. Town council sent over some comments right before the meeting started tonight.
Is this it? Okay.
No, so that one, Dennis, I think is, if that's town council's, there's an earlier draft that should be in the materials, or, I know Paula emailed them to the board.
So these are not the ones that were, which one's which?
All right, then the one in, if you click on the package, the first set should be there. I can at least just review them. These are really the government
Yeah,
study committee's
312.
changes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but the 3.9, the draft mark 3.9 is the government studies earlier comments. And these came up at our meeting. We were all at the warrant, we were at the warrant committee meeting with members of the government study committee on Monday evening. And just briefly, the comments, one was from town council, which was to add in some notwithstanding any general or special law in section 2, which is already in section 1. But the comments that came from the government study committee were in section 2P. We had some talk before about the procurement officer, and the suggestion here from government study is to have the town administrator appoint the chief procurement officer. And that, it could be the town administrator appointing herself or himself, but until we figure out who really should be the right person to be the procurement officer, the appointment power rather than serving as the procurement officer
Yeah.
is what they thought would be better.
Yeah.
The sentence after 2W has some changes that were made Monday night, and it's really a wording change. This is, the government study committee wanted to take the sentence out because they thought the town administrator shouldn't be able to delegate duties to department heads or other employees because they want the town administrator. Now that we're transferring all this power to the town administrator, keep the town administrator accountable for it, our board at previous meetings has said we think that delegation power is essential to do the job. So I think the wording change makes sense, and the way they prefer to word it is to say the town administrator may delegate duties to any subordinate officer or employee to aid the town administrator in the performance of his or her duties and responsibilities. It takes out language saying exercise any power, on the theory that that could include a power of appointment. So it's really meant to try to serve our purpose and address their concern at the same time. The recommendation to delete Section 3, Section 3 was added, or I think not added, it was in the initial draft from the Government Study Committee, and it would have, it says the Board of Selectmen and town meeting may, by amending the bylaws, delegate licensing authority other than things like liquor licenses, in-holder licenses, common vic licenses, and food vendors. We could delegate other licensing authority to the town administrator. Our question at a previous meeting had been, well, what licenses are contemplated? And the Government Study Committee is recommending that that section just be deleted. They also wanted, in Section 5, we have a provision in here for the appointment of an interim town administrator, and their concern was not for a long period interim administrator, but what if the town administrator has an illness or is incapacitated for a shorter period of time? They wanted to add in the appointment, some provision for the appointment of a temporary town administrator, because one question that they had was, would the powers revert from the town administrator to the Board of Selectmen at that point if the town administrator is incapacitated? And the answer from town council is that it would not, and we just need to draft a provision to include that, to provide for the board to make an appointment. So the second version is the changes that came over from town council just before we met tonight.
So one question on, since you were talking about Section 5.
Okay.
Right now, Section 5 has a not longer than 12-month period to it?
All right, so this is town council. I haven't even looked at this yet. This is town council's draft, so we need to work through it as we go. So if you want to go, do you want to go to that section
Is this
first?
the draft now that we got today? That's his draft, right?
Yes. Town council's is the one that takes, if you look at the first page, that takes the notwithstanding language out of the first paragraph and into the second paragraph, Section 2, just so we're all in the same.
Okay.
Okay, so Section 5, John has added a subsection. I'll just read it. In the event of a temporary absence of the town administrator for a period of not less than 14 consecutive days, the Board of Selectmen may appoint in writing a qualified town officer or employee to serve as the acting town administrator. The acting town administrator shall exercise the powers and perform the duties of the town administrator until such time as the Board of Selectmen revokes in writing such appointment as acting town administrator.
What about compensation?
I don't think compensation is addressed anywhere in here. This is really just the setting forth the powers and duties,
right,
whereas compensation would be bargained in an employment contract.
No, I get it, but if you take a regular employee and make them the interim town administrator, you could be doubling their salary, like it's...
Yeah, but I think that would get negotiated, or the board, because if this becomes legislation, this, unless it's changed at some future time, could be in existence for decades, so compensation will vary over time. So that's not going to be set forth in the legislation, but it would be set by a board that's making that appointment.
I guess my question is that 12 months, does that make the 12 months hard and fast? And what happens if you run into that rare circumstance where you need more than 12 months? Is there any provision to extend it beyond that?
Well, all right, so that's a different issue. So that's the interim town administrator. And when that, I think you raised that before, Tom, at a meeting.
Yep.
And the Government Study Committee's view was, well, if it takes more than 12 months, then just appoint somebody for 12 months and then appoint somebody again for another interim period. It's different than the short-term absence, but...
Okay. Was the interim talked about?
The first paragraph of Section 5 is the interim. The second paragraph is the acting town administrator for a short-term vacancy.
Vacancy, town administrator, serve. What am I reading wrong? I'm reading Section 5. In the event of a vacancy in the position of town administrator, the board shall appoint an interim town administrator to serve until such time as the next town administrator is appointed, but not for a period of longer than 12 months.
Yep.
So what do we do if you don't have
You have to make another appointment then. Or you hire or you hire the interim to be the, under a 1 or a 2-year contract. It's a different issue than the one that John was asked to address in terms of the short-term vacancy.
Okay.
So if, we could go back on that if we needed to, but the Government Study Committee's view was that if it takes more than 12 months to replace a town administrator, we should be entering into a short-term or a 1-year employment contract. I mean, I understand your point.
Yeah,
It could
I'm
be that
just trying to think
somebody
about it for a second.
is
Yeah.
interviewed and offered the job and then doesn't take it, and then we end up
You
going
back
back
out.
out. It could be more than 12 months.
Right, exactly.
Can we go back to Section 2B and C?
Yes.
So Section B allows the town administrator to hire department heads, police chief, fire chief,
Yes.
and then within 15 days it becomes effective. The
Right.
Board of Selectmen will be notified,
Yes.
and if we don't like the appointment, we can basically make it null and void.
Yes.
But if you go to Section C, the town administrator has the authority to suspend or remove any person. I'm assuming remove means fire somebody.
Yes.
Okay. And the only person that he, in this case, she, would have to consult is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
When it's not even consult, the Government Study Committee changed that word from consult to inform. So because there was confusion on their, not confusion, there was concern on their board that consult was a vague term, and what does it really mean? And I think one of you two maybe made that same comment at a meeting. So it's been changed to just inform the chair of the board, whoever's the current chair of the board. So the board doesn't have any right to say that that person should not be fired. It would be the town,
Right, the board does have
administrators.
Right, but the board has the right to say if somebody can be hired.
Well, it has the right to veto.
Has a veto power.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And you would hope you'd use that veto power very discriminately. But, yeah.
See, personally, I don't like that because, I mean, Anne Marie is here now, God knows who the next town administrator will be, and, you take a Board of Selectmen in 5 or 6 years' time, we don't know who they're going to be. If you get the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator together, they can just get rid of any chief.
But the chairman doesn't have the right to do it. It's
No,
the town administrator.
it's going to be informed.
Yeah, and so I guess the theory then would be that if it's a 5-member board, then maybe the chair, well, I guess in either case, the chair could inform the other two that this decision has been taken, or the town administrator would eventually inform them. I think the reason that this Government Study Committee came up with the chair was that under a circumstance where you might want to if there's been an employee who's been let's just take an example of embezzling, or there's some extreme example where an employee has acted in some way that requires an immediate dismissal, then if you have, whether it's a 3-member or a 5-member board, if you can't reach somebody right away and it's a consult requirement, then you might not, the town administrator might not be able to reach all of the selectmen. So that's why that committee changed it. I thought we were I guess we're kind of reopening this, because
The other thing
I
you gotta
think we thought that
consider,
2C was in final form, but if we want to reopen it, we'll have to talk about it Monday night with the warrant committee.
The other thing you got to consider, and I suppose it may not always be like this, but right now, virtually every department, not every, but virtually every department head is part of a collective bargaining agreement. There is due process. I mean, the town administrator can't fire them without a due process.
We had to follow you'd have to follow what's bargained for in the agreements. Or if it's a department head, some of them have contracts, so the contract might specify what the process there is and what the grounds are.
I don't think no, it's still a union, in terms of the due process, it's still a union contract. It's just that by the end of their contract, if they do have a contract, you have the ability not to appoint them again. But that's all you have.
But if someone has a contract, they're not in the union, isn't that?
Yeah, no, they still are.
No, they're separate
Like the
employment
police chief,
agreements.
Well, their
chief,
employment agreement, they're not really,
fire chief.
I mean,
Well,
They're
the
employment
agreements,
agreements. They're not in the
there are
union.
employment agreements for quite a few of the department heads.
Department heads are in the managers' union, and
Right,
have
but
a
they still
two-year
have those appointments.
They have a 2-year appointment.
Right, and at the end of that
2
appointment, you
You
can,
can
for,
just
Not renew it.
appoint.
right, you can not reappoint.
Okay, do any of the employment agreements they must have provisions in there for termination, because most employments in the private sector do. I would think they do.
Separate employment agreements for your police chief, your fire chief, your deputy chief.
But, yeah, those are
They all
those
got
are full-blown
separate.
contracts, and they're not union.
Right, so
But the ones that are union have the
the collective bargaining
agreement
yeah.
behind them. So the only termination before the end of their appointment period would be for cause, and then you'd probably have to go through the union process of hearing and the whole bit.
I get that, but I'm uncomfortable with the fact that we could come in some night to a meeting and find that our fire chief has been eliminated. And we don't have any say in it.
Well, but keep in mind what Colleen Corona said when she was here, that the town administrator, if the goal here is to get the Board of Selectmen acting more as the Board of Directors and not being involved with a lot of the hiring and the day-to-day decisions, then the town administrator serves at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen. So the town administrator is going to know that if that person starts taking arbitrary action to just terminate employees for no reason,
Understood,
then
yeah.
the Board of Selectmen is
That
going to
town
be
administrator's
terminating the
gonna be
town
gone, yeah.
administrator.
I get that, but by that point, the fire chief is gone or the police chief is gone, you know? I would rather see that not just the chairman, but the whole Board of Selectmen should weigh in on this, if anybody is going to get
Well, I guess nobody's weighing in on it, that's the problem.
But they're gonna be
It's
informed, Tom.
Informed. I guess you could say the whole board should be informed, perhaps.
We can bring that issue up Monday night. I think,
But
I think the only
informed
issue
doesn't
there-
contemplate a discussion.
that's right.
It's just
It's
informed.
notice. It's notice that I've taken this action. And, one of the reasons to go to the 5-member board is to have more discussion among members of the board where you don't have an open meeting law issue. So Colleen Corona, when she was from East, the selectman from the town of Easton, when she was here, she said that when she was the chair, and whoever's the chair, is usually the one who has communication with the town administrator and then reports it out to the members of the board. That may not be something that Milton wants to do. I have a feeling that members of the Board of Selectmen in Milton are going to want to have direct access to the town administrator. I would. I'm guessing all of us would. So the idea was that it's a notice to the chair, and then the chair would notify the board so that the town administrator wouldn't be prevented from taking an immediate action in a rare circumstance of a situation that needs to be addressed. I mean, I'm just reporting
I
that
get
this
it.
is the government
Yeah.
study.
I mean, we can
committee.
talk about it Monday night anyway, at the warrant committee.
We can. I think the government study committee will be surprised if we're reopen. I think they thought we were kind of in agreement on areas where we're not making changes, but if we want to reopen something, I guess that's our right to do that. The idea here is the warrant committee is looking for something that's in pretty close to final form from our point of view, knowing that they might have a lot of changes to it, and then town meeting might have a lot of changes.
Would inform the whole board, would that be better? Again, call it inform, so.
Yeah, inform the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, why don't I let Rick know about that. His committee's going to be meeting at 7 o'clock on Monday night. Warrant committee's at 7:30, so they're planning to discuss this a little bit earlier. I can alert him to the fact that that's, do we want to take a vote on that? What's the consensus?
I mean, I have no problem with inform the Board of Selectmen. I mean, it's a phone call, but.
Yeah, I don't either. So if we want to make that the full board, then why don't we say that that's our board's view?
Yeah.
And we'll see what the government study committee thinks. Okay, so if we can just go back to John Flynn's other changes.
Mhm.
So in section 2, he's just moving the first clause, notwithstanding he's changing that to the second paragraph. He's changing in 2B the word dismissal to removal. The only other issue that we had asked him to take a look at was section 2U, like umbrella. This is the section in which an N-Star or a National Grid utility grant of location would be delegated to the town administrator, so that rather than the board having those N-Star hearings, the town administrator would preside over those hearings. And town council's advice was that it's permissible to delegate that, but there has to be a procedure in
This is a
place that the
public
town
hearing.
administrator would
As a
follow.
public
So
hearing.
he's written just in accordance with the procedure established for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
He thinks that that's sufficient. The main change really was just the temporary appointment in section 5.
Yep.
Personnel Board has looked at this and had a couple of comments, but I don't think town council made any changes in response. One of their comments was that In section 1, they were concerned with the language allowing the board to enter into a contract not more than 3 years in length with the town administrator, and their concern was just that that might be interpreted to mean that the town administrator couldn't serve for more than 3 years. But town council doesn't believe that that's the right interpretation, that it just allows for the contract to be no more than that long, but the person could be reappointed at the board's discretion. I think that was their primary comment. So, other than reporting this change in section 2C to the Government Study Committee, do we have any other comments
I'm fine with the rest.
or changes?
Fine,
All right, then, do we want to take a vote, other than, well, I guess in this version, we're changing this language in section 2C to taking out the words chairperson of the, do we want to have a motion to
I'll
approve
make a
this
motion
form?
to approve the wording, the content of Article 15, Town Administrator articles, subject to the one change that we made.
Second.
Any discussion? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. So we'll meet with the warrant committee on Monday night about this. I guess we'll probably all be there, and the government study committee will be there. And I should probably just emphasize one thing that Rick and I talked about, which is that every time one of our two boards or committees meets, we wind up having more changes. And I thought Rick made a good point, which is that this recommendation, assuming the warrant committee adopts it without making too many changes, this is already a big change. We're transferring the authority to hire, Rick's estimation was 100, and I think we want to verify that before town meeting, that, you're talking 50 or so police officers, you add in all of the town departments, where this is a big change, and we have pretty broad consensus. If everyone were writing their own version of this, we'd probably all come up with some different version. But we have pretty broad agreement, and the concern is that if we wind up, because it's happening on their committee too, if we wind up wordsmithing too many sections of this, we're never going to be finished with it. Right. So at some point, we have to say to the warrant committee, here's where we're at. The two boards, we don't all agree on it, but we don't all agree on every wording provision in it, but we agree on the broad concept that it's moving the town in the right direction, and it's transferring a lot of day-to-day authority to the town administrator. So we'll see where the warrant committee goes.
While you say 100,
we might come out of that with some more changes to this.
Well, while you say 100, when you think about the police, the civil service, and there's really not much discretion. I mean, there's a little bit of discretion, but very, very little. And
but still, the board's hiring them, so it's
technically.
Yeah, but but at least you're moving the authority there to the town administrator.
But it's such a rigid appointment because of civil service laws that there is a little bit of discretion to bypass somebody, but other than that, there's not much discretion in who you hire.
Yeah, true. I guess the point is it's not coming to this board for an action on an agenda item. Okay, so we took a vote on that. We voted that, right? Yeah. Okay. We are now on to, we have items 10 and 11 relate to each other. We have, in item 10, this is a proposal to reopen and close the May 2015 annual town meeting warrant if we want to remove the Swift Hat Shop articles, which are 49 and 50. They're the last two articles that are in the warrant. Number 11 relates to the appointment of a committee, and we currently have 6 people who are, including Linda Weld, who was here earlier, who are willing to serve on the Preservation Committee. Should we take number 11 first? I think it might be better to take these out of order so we can talk about the committee and then make a decision as to what we want to do with the articles. So number 11.
I'll make a motion to appoint the...
You have the revised motion.
Yeah, I know. The following residents to the Swift Hat Shop Preservation Committee to serve through March of 2016: Edward E. Wendell, Linda Weld, April Lamoureux, Mary Noble, Peter Jeffries, and Ned Corcoran.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, now this is 6 people. The charge refers to 9 people, and the idea here is to try to at least get some people appointed to this committee tonight, and possibly appoint the remaining members at at the next meeting, which is on March 24th. I know we've still been reaching out to people. Some of these people have been recommended by either Steve O'Donnell, the chair of our Historical Commission, and Ted Wendell and Linda Weld are both members of the Historical Commission. The charge does say that 2 members would be appointed by the Historical Commission. John Cronin, our former town administrator, suggested a number of people, including some of these appointees, as well as some people that we've talked with who are not able to serve for a variety of reasons. But we have 6 out of the 9 tonight, and if anyone has more names to recommend or has reached out to anyone, and if we could get them on the next agenda, we could get the full committee appointed. The charge had mentioned we'd like to have people with a background in architecture or real estate, planning, development, fundraising. All of these people bring some aspect of that to the committee. And I think we have some pretty good candidates here.
Yeah, fine with it.
So shall we appoint these tonight? We've made a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so back to number 10. We've put on the agenda an opportunity to reopen and close the warrant to remove the articles. I know we all
Much as it
would
pains
like to
me.
see this move forward more quickly than maybe it has been, but as we talked about at a prior meeting, if articles
Still too
really
many
aren't ready
questions.
for town meeting,
There's
then
still too many questions.
it's better not to have them sent back for further study, or worse, to have them voted down. So it probably would make sense, I think, to remove them and to let the committee do its work and see whether they're ready to submit something for October or possibly later, but maybe October would be
I would
a
like to
good
see
time.
something for October, because I mean, the longer we wait, but if we're going to do it, it means that, as a board, as we have to stay on top of it, town administrator, everybody's got to keep this, in, not on the back burner, but to keep it up in the forefront. Otherwise, it just gets forgotten about, and that building's going to fall down before we ever do anything about it.
I'll move to reopen the 2015 annual town meeting warrant, remove Articles 49 and 50, and close the warrant.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on the motion? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right, moving along, but we'll notify the warrant committee that those have been removed. Moving on to number 12, we have 3 different appointments to be made.
Okay, I'll move to reappoint Walter Buddy McDermott and Paul Hopkins to the Radio Amateur Communication Emergency Services Races Committee to serve through March 2016.
Second.
I've got to admit, this is a committee I've never heard of.
No, the next one as well.
Paul or Rizzi can tell you what they are.
Second.
Ham radio, Paul, or is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what I figured it was.
All in
They-
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to,
At least they're not CBs.
We actually do a presentation every year on the gazebo, a 24-hour presentation.
Do they really?
Yes, in June. So you might want to tune in this year.
move to appoint Michael Blanchard as the privacy officer for the town
Second.
to serve through March 2016.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What is a privacy officer?
It's
Health insurance purposes.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, I'll move to appoint Branch Lane as the tree warden for the town to serve through March 2016.
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you to all of them for serving. We now have an appointment for a senior administrative clerk in the Council on Aging.
To approve the appointment of Patricia Kelly to the position of Senior Administrative Clerk at the Council on Aging, contingent upon approval by the Personnel Board.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations to Patricia on her new posting. The next item on our agenda is a release of our executive session minutes for January 21st. We have a revised motion on that one as well.
Okay, yeah.
We have one item that we have to withhold from those minutes.
I'll move to release to the public the January 21st, 2015 executive session meeting minutes, withholding item number 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That item, the release of the executive session minutes, relates to our next item, which is the Chapter 40B, the determination of the 1.5% land area. And this, so our minutes address, the minutes we've just released from executive session relate to a discussion we had in executive session that evening on the appeal, the decision whether to appeal from the Department of Housing and Community Development's denial of the town's attempt made last fall to have a certification that essentially, in kind of plain English, would exempt us from a 40B. And a little bit of background on this, and Mr. Clark is here in the room. He was involved quite a bit in this. And so we'll have a discussion about what we voted in executive session, but just by way of background, for people who are watching, this has been a little bit unusual in that the discussions on an appeal took place in executive session twice at the Board of Appeals and once at this board. And because of that, there hasn't been a public discussion. So there's been some misinformation that's out there. And we had a resident come in at Citizen Speak a couple of weeks ago, make reference at Citizen Speak to the board's action in executive session. We need to just clarify really what the issue that was before us was and what the procedure leading up to that was. So the 1.5%, right before Thanksgiving, right after the filing of the 40B proposal for the Randolph Ave development, an abutters attorney raised this issue that the town might be at 1.5%, meaning 1.5% of our eligible land. And there's a large statutory definition for what that is and what's excluded and what's included. That if 1.5% of Milton's land had on it eligible units, meaning units that are on our subsidized housing inventory, which is a special list. It's not just any house in which someone at a certain income might be. It has to be housing that's been certified to be on that list. And it's the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is a state agency that makes that determination. And we have a list, that's the list that tells us we're at 4.4% right now in terms of affordable housing in Milton.
4.4% of the total housing stock.
Of the total housing stock, that's right. And an alternative test to the 10, everybody knows the 10% test, which is if the town has 10% of its housing be affordable housing stock, then we can, the Board of Appeals is authorized to be able to deny a comprehensive permit application. So we know we're far away from the 10%. We're only at 4.4%. There's an alternative test, which is if 1.5% of certain land, it's not all land, there are some areas that are excluded, buildable land. If 1.5% of that land is occupied by these types of housing units that are affordable housing, then that's an alternative means for the town to satisfy its housing obligations.
And that's
so
a test by acreage.
Yes.
And what?
By acreage.
Yeah.
So 1.5% of our acreage. So the question was presented shortly before Thanksgiving, right around the time that the 40B for Randolph Ave had been filed with the Board of Appeals, not with us. The planning director, together with our GIS person who works out of the Department of Public Works, spent an awful lot of time, but it was a short period of time, but spent a lot of their days looking at, going through the maps, trying to figure out, are we at the 1.5%? And with our 40B consultant, Kathleen O'Donnell, who's been the attorney representing the selectmen, their belief at the time was that we were above 1.5%. And we were at the Board of Appeals meeting in early December on the 40B hearing. The issue was raised and evidence was presented. Well, I guess maybe not evidence, but maybe that's not quite the right word. But we presented information to the Board of Appeals suggesting that we were above the 1.5% as a town, and that we thought the exemption should apply to us, and we should seek the certification. There's a short time frame in which that can be raised. It can only be within 15 days of the hearing being opened. So the Board of Appeals had a short window of time to decide this. They, based on the information we submitted, they submitted the request to the state. In pretty short order, the state denied our request. When I say our, it's the Board of Appeals request. So the state denied it, and the question in early January was, should the town file an appeal to the next level, which is the Housing Appeals Committee.
And that decision really rests with the Board of Appeals.
Yes, that's right. So that's a Board of Appeals decision because they're the only ones with the standing to raise the issue in the first place, which they did, based on information that Bill and Kathleen and Alan Bishop had provided, and we had agreed with should be presented. So the Board of Appeals was presented with the question of should an appeal be filed. The Board of Appeals had a meeting in executive session with Town Council, John Flynn. I don't know who else was there, possibly one of his colleagues. The Town Council then requested a meeting with us, which we had on January 21st in executive session. And what he reported to us in executive session was that the Board of Appeals unanimously opposed filing an appeal because of the calculation that Town Council provided to them, which showed that our housing stock was not above 1.5%. It was 0.77%. And the information we had from Town Council was Milton would need 66.77 acres, so roughly 67 acres, in order to satisfy this 1.5% test. We were only at 34 acres, according to Town Council's research. And he had spent, and colleagues of his had spent, a significant amount of time looking at this. They had more time than we initially did to look at it. So there's a greater period of time to do the research in January than there was during a compressed period around Thanksgiving. The planning director and Kathleen O'Donnell met with the Town Council's office to go over the calculations. And what Town Council reported to us was the reason he was meeting with us in January was because the Board of Appeals, again, said they were unanimously opposed to filing an appeal based on his finding that the